Hi everyone. Today we're going to be speaking to another lawyer who has swapped legal briefs for literary ones. Emily Tsokos Purtill spent over a decade in top-tier firms in Perth and a notable year in Paris before turning towards the thing that had been her calling all along, writing fiction. Her debut novel, Matia, an intergenerational story of four Greek-Australian women bound by superstition, inheritance and resilience, just won the 2025 Western Australian Premier's Book Award for an Emerging Writer.
Like our interview with Solari Gentle last season, Emily's story sits at that fascinating intersection between structure and creativity, law and art, head and heart. We're going to talk to her about what it takes to step away from a career and the freedom that comes when you stop waiting for the right time to begin. If you've ever wondered what might happen if you stopped following the rules and started writing your own story, then we think you're going to love this chat. Hi everyone. Before we get into it today, we've got something a little bit special for you. Emily has really kindly given us a copy of her award-winning novel, Matia, to pass on to one lucky outlaw. To enter, all you need to do is to sign up to our newsletter. The link is on our website, www.outlawspodcast.com, and also in the show notes. If you're already a subscriber, you're automatically in the draw. Outlaws look after their own. And if you want a bonus entry, just leave a comment on our giveaway post on LinkedIn, Instagram or Facebook. Any comment counts. You can write a word, an emoji, whatever you like. We'll announce the winner in 3 weeks. That's the 14th of December 2025. Massive thank you to Emily for giving us a copy and for joining us for such a great conversation.
Emily, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us on the Outlaws podcast. I'm not a real fiction reader, actually. I tend to read more nonfiction, but I loved it. And in fact, wagged something I was supposed to be doing just to finish it because I was 50 pages to the end and I couldn't wait till the end of the day. So that's quite a compliment.
Yeah, that's a great review.
It was a wonderful book, but we can talk about that in a second. But Emily, you're a lawyer by profession.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about your background.
Sure. Well, when I finished uni in 2002, I started working as a lawyer, as a commercial lawyer, and then I had 2 years after that at the same firm, and then I worked at another firm for 3 years. Then I got married, and I had the opportunity to work in Paris for a year at Herbert Smith. So I did
jealous.
that, which was it was pretty special. And then I came back to Perth. I worked in house for a year, and then I had a baby, and then we had the opportunity to go to New York for a year for my husband's fellowship, so I did that. So I had a bit of time off from law while I had the children, and then I went back to work, and I worked at a firm for 3.5 years, 3 days a week, and then but in the meantime, doing all this, being a lawyer and also being a parent, I'd always wanted to be a writer. I'd always sort of written on the side and had all these manuscripts that I wanted to to write and to finish and to get published. And then eventually I just decided to really prioritize my writing, and I just knew I couldn't do everything perfectly because, when I'm being a lawyer, I'm just doing everything at 110%. And it's just really hard to maintain. I found it extremely difficult. Just to be everything to everyone, I guess. So I chose myself.
Good on you. I need to backtrack to Paris, obviously.
Okay, sure.
Can you just tell me about it, please, just so that I can, immerse
sure.
myself.
I think it's different if you're in a year in Paris without working at a law firm, and then the difference being working at a law firm, which it was an amazing experience, and I'm really grateful for it. And I'm still in touch with the partner that I worked for and the lawyers in the team. And it was really amazing, and I was really grateful to have the experience. And and I got a lot out of it. And, and I just, like I said before, I just married my husband. So we were, newlyweds in Paris, and he was, working as well.
What a terribly unromantic city to be a newlywed in.
We had a great time together, and I feel like it was and I just really I really love traveling, and I really wanted to work overseas, and so it was a really special experience.
Was there a massive difference in the culture of work in Paris than in Perth or wherever you were at the
Yeah, I
time?
mean, it was, I mean, some parts were different, but in a lot of ways, I think it was like because some of the team was British. And so I was in like the English law team, which was quite a sort of small part of the team, and everybody else was like French. And, but yeah, I guess everyone sort of started work a bit later, finished very late.
Mm.
But everyone took time to go out for lunch every day.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that was amazing. And I loved that. And I had some really beautiful lunches. And yeah, it was a really special thing to do. And I'm
That
glad
is
I
such a
did it.
nice aspect of French and Italian culture too, I know, and Spanish as well, where
Yes. Yeah.
lunch and food is taken seriously. And so it's not
Mm.
just you don't just eat at your desk.
No.
Actually, shops shut, and I mean, not in some of the bigger cities I know now, but in regional areas, the shops shut and everyone takes that break. It's such a
Yeah.
great, I like that. I think that's a wonderful aspect of the culture.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I agree.
thank you for immersing me in that for a bit. I think still probably I wouldn't go back and work for Big Law just to go to Paris for a year. There might be easier ways, but
There might be. I haven't
Yeah.
worked it out yet, but there might be.
So, Emily, you had quite a significant career and mainly commercial and sort of the corporate world, you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so there must have come a time when you were sort of juggling, as you said, you chose yourself, you were juggling children and a career in law and then also trying to write. So, how did you write? Like, did you carve out time or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of Matia I wrote basically like sitting in my car between different things. So
wow.
at that point in my life, I had my three children were all at the same school. Now they're at three different schools, but when they were all at the same school, I would have one school pickup. So there would be this kind of, half an hour in the day where I would sort of get in the car and then just sit there and sort of finish write a scene, and I might have like the youngest one sort of asleep in the back seat before they went to school. And then, and then obviously like when everyone is at school, then there's like if you're working 3 days a week, which I was, then I had 2 days, which, I had free to, to write and do everything else that's required when you have three young children. But then I just found, I think the more I progressed and the more sort of serious I got about, what's the next step for me. I think I was probably like Australia's oldest senior associate. I mean, at what point do you what's your next like step once you have three children and you work 3 days a week? Like,
And you get
where
to
do you
those
go?
inflection points in your career anyway, don't you? I think where you, for whatever reason, you hit a point and you think, is this it? Or it's like almost like a fork in the road, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then it does make you, whether it's your Saturn return, which is I'm sure that's completely true, the astrological phenomena. We discussed this before, but
What was it?
Saturn
Saturn
return.
return. Never heard of it.
No, okay. It's just the theory that Saturn returns into your star sign every
Oh,
25
okay.
to 28 years, and then you'll do
Oh,
something different, which is weird because that's exactly when I did go, you know what, I'm going to change things up. I'm going to shake
yes.
things up and leave and do
Hmm.
something different. But I'm not sure if it's Saturn's fault. But in any event,
Hmm.
you get to those points, I think, don't you, when you go, for whatever reason, at whatever time in your life, I think, whether it's children getting to a certain stage or just an age thing or a length in what you've been doing or whatever it is, you do start to reflect and go, well, what is the next stage going to look
Mm-mm.
like for me? So it sounds as though
Yeah.
you got to that point.
Absolutely. And writing and, having a book was always, what I wanted to do. But, I became a lawyer for a multitude of different reasons. And it's hard to kind of go back and sort of think all those choices that you made when you were like, 16, 17 and about subjects and different things and paths. And it was a different time then. So, yeah. And,
Can I just ask though, because I'm always fascinated as someone who's been sort of teaching in law schools for most of my career, and I have my own thoughts about why I chose it at the time I did. And again, like you, very young. Mine was kind of more about, well, I'm not mathsy or sciencey, and so law seems to be kind of the obvious choice. But what were some of the reasons for choosing law at the time? And do you have any
Yeah.
regrets about it?
I'd seen all my family just work so hard, and my grandparents, who had come from Greece, they lived down the road from us our whole lives, and and I knew their story, and everyone was just working really hard, and that's what you did, and everyone had made a lot of sacrifices, for us and the lives that we had. And, and I felt like I guess I just wasn't really brave enough to say, I don't want to, I don't want to be a lawyer. I think I'm going to be a writer. And I still don't know of I still don't know what's like the path to even be a writer. I mean, you need life experience, and you need an ability to craft a story, and you need those sorts of things. But, if everyone does the same creative writing degree, I feel like everyone's going to write the same in the same way or the same story. And I'm very and I feel like I've been able to use my life and my experiences in a different way in the way I write and in my fiction. So so I guess it was like a family. I felt like I kind of had to do something that was like a serious job.
It's such a theme that we hear from people, isn't it?
Mm.
And I mean, Kate and I have talked about that as well. And, there's actually lots of lawyers in my family who are also, first and second generation immigrants. And Kate, you've talked about that as well. And Solari Gentle talked about that, you had to go and get this proper job, and there's this pressure when, people have come to Australia and that you have to take up this opportunity. I just think it's such a common theme. And I wonder, Kate, I mean, it's too late probably by the time they get to law school, but it'd be great, wouldn't it, to kind of be able to have those conversations earlier with young adults and say, is this really what you want to do? Or are you
Yeah.
just doing it because you think that someone else is expecting you to do this? And as Kate, I mean, you've said this a lot, Kate, law degrees are useful for lots of things. And Emily, probably for
That's
writing too,
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, I do feel like if I'd sort of finished uni and then been brave enough to kind of do something that was like a little bit different, but not like go into commercial law, I feel like it would have been a bit different for me too. But I felt like I sort of, there's a bit of hype at the end of uni with like, how many offers did you get and all that stuff. And
Yes.
I feel like I really kind of bought into that. And I only got one
Really
offer.
hard not to, though, isn't it? When that's the dominant sort of atmosphere. Well,
culture.
that's what you're swimming in, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it takes, especially when you're young too, I think it takes a very unusual person to be able to tune in to that. Look like you, I also too, I have to say, I have actually no regrets about the way my life has worked out, and think, I mean, I'm a bit of a everything happens for a reason kind of person.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so it's making me think of Matia too. It's shades of Clara here, isn't it?
Yes.
And her mum. Is it Kula? Is that how you say her name?
Gula, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Gula. Yeah.
What was the moment when you realised that that law wasn't the story for you, that you wanted to be a writer? Was it a moment where you had this sudden realisation, or was it more of a slow build?
I think, it's always been a slow build, and it's always, I did want to be a writer ever since I was young. And when I was a teenager, I entered short story competitions and I did very well, but I still didn't really know how to be a writer or how it was going to work out. And I felt like there were sort of different points where I've sort of tried with different manuscripts. And then over the years, I feel, I just kept trying basically with different books. And and then I felt like, if I just didn't want to regret not having 100% tried to do it. And so when I resigned from the law firm that I was working at, I didn't really have a plan. I was like, I just really wanted to focus 100% on writing. And then I did some other part-time sort of casual work in the meantime. But I guess it's just always been something I really wanted to do. And then I guess I just had to make a a decision.
Did it feel scary when you resigned, or did it feel like this is what's
Yeah.
supposed to be happening?
I feel like, I mean, I've resigned from a lot of jobs. I've moved around quite a bit, but I think it always does feel scary, and it's a really strange thing to try and explain to people as well, because I feel like, because there's one part of me that's just always the lawyer, and I've always been there, and there I am, and then there's the other side of me where I'm like, well, actually, I actually have this other life and this other kind of hobby and interest, and I feel like a lot of the time in my work, as a lawyer in firms over the years, I mean, I just haven't had any other hobbies. I have just had work. And I didn't even have time to read books. And there are whole years where I just don't even think I read like a novel or even a nonfiction book or anything. And so I really, and so at some point I really like made an effort to prioritize reading, because so when I lived in New York that year, when I had 2 young children at the time, and I did some creative writing courses over there, and I feel like they were really good because they were sort of teaching me to I guess read as a writer. The reading and the writing is, I think, always go together, and so I really got back into reading a lot more there. And then I realized, and there was a massive jump too when I read what I had written, like in terms of my fiction work, before I went to New York and did these courses and focused my reading, a lot more, and just started to read more and read more, with more depth and breadth of fiction and other things too. There was just a noticeable jump in I think, of the quality of my work. So I feel like if I go back and read what I was writing before then and what I was writing after then, I feel like I massively improved, which is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, that's a really interesting point about doing the courses, which I want to come back to, but I just want to
Sure.
circle back to what you said about hobbies, because
Mm.
one of the questions often that I'll ask people when they come and see me for coaching, what are your hobbies? And
Oh.
you just get blank looks. And I was the same, when I had to stop working, it was like, okay, well, now I have time to do my hobbies. What are my hobbies? Oh, I don't have any hobbies. At some
Yes.
point along the way, you become so consumed by your work. And I feel like it's a red flag. If there are people listening to this and you don't know what your hobbies are, that's bad. It just because life is so all consuming when you've got a full-time job. If you're a parent as well, or any other caring that people happen to do, it takes up a lot of time. And so you've got to find space amongst all of those things for your hobbies, but we don't. We just drop them off and we just become consumed by all of those jobs, whether it be the unpaid jobs that we do or the paid jobs that we do. And then I think often people get to that point where they're feeling like, I've lost myself really. There's the things that I love. And I did the same, and I started reading more, and I was always, a massive reader. And at some point I just dropped it off. And I think it's because you don't have headspace.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, you're working on, I was like working on contracts all day and, doing these transactions and doing these deals. And then the last thing I wanted to do was like get into bed and read a book. I just wanted to go to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And so going back to the courses, because you said at the beginning, I didn't even know how to be a writer. And I think, there's going to be lots of people who are thinking that.
Yes.
But it sounds like you found those courses really useful to help you to learn how to be a writer.
I think so. And I mean, the thing is as well, like I could have at some point, and I did think about this when, I was on maternity leave, I thought, oh, maybe I should do like a master's in creative writing or try and go back to uni and do it in a very structured sort of way. But then I thought that's kind of the like lawyer way to do it. And I think I need to do it in a different way. So when I was in, and I also had, limited time. So when I was in New York, NYU offer these great courses. You can actually do them online, and they're short courses, and you work one-on-one with a writing tutor, and you just, you give them your work and they tell you what's good, what needs improvement. They kind of help you shape the story. Yeah, but it was great. So I did that, and that writing tutor, I mean, she's become like a really, a close friend, and I really value her opinion. So there was that course at NYU, and there was also this other course at the 92Y, which is this sort of institution in New York, and they do like lots of different courses and they have lots of different events. And yeah, that was called Writing Motherhood. And yeah, it was just really interesting, and I just really loved it. So was doing these 2 courses that were like, 1 hour a week, but they really kind of complemented each other, and I did all the homework, and yeah, that really, I think they really helped me.
So, I mean, so it sounds like you've had the opportunities, and again, just the sort of the good fortune to be in the right place through, because I think you said you were in New York for your husband's work. Is
Yes, I was.
that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And which is, I mean, such an amazing city to be in. And then you, as you said, you came to that point where actually you're going to move into this full time. Was there anything about being a lawyer you had to unlearn to be a better writer?
That's a good question. Anything I had to unlearn? Well, I feel like, yeah, there's so many good things I learned from being a lawyer that have translated massively. But I think, the whole thing with the 6-minute billing and the being accountable all the time, like I still find it difficult to take breaks, or I feel like, it's okay, like, not to do any writing for a day. Like, no one's going to tell me off. I'm actually completely in charge of what I do. And I think that's really interesting that I still feel that.
Productivity is pushed into us, I think, as lawyers, but I
Yeah.
think also just as society,
Yeah.
that whatever people's professions are, and just even in day-to-day life, people think they've just got to be productive all of the time. And if
Yeah.
you're not, you're somehow lazy. And so I think it is something that is incredibly difficult for people to break away from.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like
Definitely in
there's
my
some good
case.
things too about being a lawyer. And I think you alluded to that earlier, that there's
Oh,
some
yeah.
transferable skills. Do you
Yeah.
want to talk a bit more about that?
Well, for me, when I got my publishing contract for my book, I was like, well, I'm not going to sign this. And it was, the contract was fine. It was actually completely fine. But, I looked at it. I got the Australian Society of Authors. They have a legal service where they have a lawyer who just does publishing contracts, and and she can look at it's a very well priced service. It's excellent. She's excellent. And so she looked at my contract. I looked at the contract, and then sort of, just changed a few things. So I was happy with it. But then, at that point, I hadn't really met any other authors. And since then, when I've spoken to people, everyone has said to me, oh no, I just signed whatever they gave me. And I just feel like saying, I just thought, sorry, maybe that was just me. But so that was definitely helpful. I think also, I think also some of the comments I guess I've had about the book is about the complexity of like things like the timelines and the characters and the sort of interweaving of the story. But I feel like so much of a lot of the transactions that I worked on and the contracts that were just really complicated, and there was a lot of interweaving and a lot of kind of cross-referencing, and I feel like if you can really get your head around things like that, I feel like, that can really help you when you're trying to write a book that doesn't kind of, start at a point and then finish 9 months later. And also, I guess like things like the business development side, because that's something where, I was really lucky early on. An author in Sydney reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to be part of this online group for all the authors in Australia who are having their first book come out in 2024. And so I said, oh, yeah, great. So she made up this Facebook group, and it was really interesting to kind of meet everybody and hear about people's different experiences. And a lot of the authors were really creating their own opportunities in terms of publicity. And so that was quite interesting because I had assumed that that's all kind of done for you by the publishing house. But, if you're with a small publisher like I am, they're very small. There's 3 people that work there, everything else is outsourced. And they've been amazing. Like I've really enjoyed working with them, and it's been great. But you also have to do a lot of the work yourself. And so I feel like that was something that I kind of had to accept, and then I've really kind of stepped into.
And do you think that sort of the career that you've had, has that sort of been a useful, in terms of that business development, in terms of that skill development, that's been something you were sort of used to doing?
Yeah, and for a while I thought, oh, maybe I would move away from law into a more sort of business development role, but yeah, I just really wanted to focus on the writing, so I decided, no, I've got to stop like making excuses and coming up with other jobs that I can do, because there's actually a lot of other jobs that I could be doing right now. So yeah, but I think I just want to focus on
Yes.
writing.
And I'm just hearing Shayla's
Yeah,
famous
you
line,
can't do everything.
well, and just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Being able to do something well is actually
Yes.
not the bar, that because there's too many things. If we're sort of we're well trained, we've got transferable skills, we've
Yeah.
got hopefully more than half a brain in our heads. There's a lot of things that we could actually be doing, and that's not the criteria. That was
Yeah.
such a mic drop moment for me when Shayla said that to me. It's like, well, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Well, that's news to me.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
That's
it's
great.
news. It's news to lots of people, and
Mm.
it's interesting, Emily, to hear you say the same thing, because and I think it's easier when there's something that's pulling you quite strongly, when you're quite clear about
Yes.
what that other thing is. It's, you were obviously able to kind of keep correcting and go, no, come on, Emily, like, let's just give a crack to the writing. Let's forget about all these other things that maybe I could do, business development or whatever it might be. I just want to have a crack at this. But I think for people that don't have that clarity, that's when it is so hard, because essentially you're asking them to believe that they will find it. And when you're in that, it's bloody hard.
Yeah.
You feel a bit lost, and it's so easy to go back to that safety of, well, yeah, I could do that, so I'll just go and do that. And maybe after I do that, the thing will become obvious. I also really like this story about riding in the car when you were dropping off the kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because, one of the books we did last season was Tiny Experiments. I think that's a great example of a little tiny experiment, like if you're so drawn to do something. When I used to drop the kids off, I was just grateful for, kind of 5 minutes of peace. Although, to be honest, I was probably sitting there checking and writing emails as I was, waiting for them to come out. But the fact that you were so drawn to do something is just a huge sign, isn't it, of,
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
should be doing this.
Yeah.
And you said it'd been around since you were very little, this desire to write. You'd been writing
Yeah.
and having some success in competitions as a teenager and things like that. So it's something,
Yeah.
it sounds like it was something that was very deep-seated within you.
I think so. Yeah, it was. And even with Matia, like I thought the idea came to me when I was very young, and I'd had this idea in my head for many years about how could I write this a multi-generational story about the Greek Australian women. And it was actually, yeah, when we lived in New York, and I felt like that was like almost the final piece, and it kind of clicked in, the whole story kind of clicked into shape for me. And then and that was the first, my first book to be published, although I've written many other things, but I feel like Matia was maybe like the most special book. And, I feel like I have like a really strong emotional connection to the story. And it has been really lovely to have it out and speak to people about it. So, yeah.
So did the novel sort of live in your head sort of fully formed, or was it just this idea that you then sort of brought to life?
I feel like it lived in my head, and the characters lived in my head. Obviously, I grew up in a Greek Australian family, and so a lot of the traditions and all the Greek weddings and the food, that's all part of my life. And then it was just basically finding the time to write it all out and to be happy with it.
When you got offered that publishing contract,
Yes.
how did you feel?
Oh, it was such a great moment. It was so strange because, so I sent, I'd sent it around, and then UWA Publishing emailed me and said, oh, I really like your book. Should we meet for coffee? And yeah, and it was amazing. And then she said, yeah, we really like it. We want to publish it. And it was such an amazing moment for me. And it was almost as though something in my head just went quiet as well. And almost like I just wanted somebody who knew what they were doing to say yes, to say that it was good enough.
Yeah.
And so
right.
it's really strange even with that, because like for me, that was the moment I was like, that's it. I've done it. I've made it.
Yeah.
And everything since then. And then after that, it was, we did some, a few copy edits and the cover and, got sent out into the world and into bookshops. But really, I feel like it was, that moment, that coffee I had with her when she said, like, this is, we're going to publish this. So that was, it was really validating for me.
Had you written novels before Matia, or was this your first full-length novel?
No, I'd written other things. And I'd been very close to having things published. And I had an agent for a while and on a different book, and that didn't go anywhere. And so, I had been rejected multiple times. And I think that's another thing with writing that you just have to get used to, is like, not everybody is going to like what you write or understand your books, especially when they don't really sit in certain genres. I feel like if you want to write in a specific genre and there's specific rules you have to follow for that genre, then I think that's kind of, you just follow those rules and you can write a book, and then you just have to kind of find the right person to who also likes it. But I think if you're writing something that's a bit like more out of the box and doesn't really fit into any kind of, a lot of the time, a lot of the feedback I had in a lot of my rejections was we just don't know where Emily's book would sit in the bookshop.
Right.
So because it was like, it was like literary, but sort of slightly literary, accessible literary, but not sort of commercial enough for commercial. So it's kind of in this weird in-between space.
Yeah, right. And so do you now describe yourself as a writer? Have you stopped saying I'm a lawyer?
Yeah, I say former lawyer.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because, until I had the book out, I was really reluctant to sort of say that I was a writer, I guess. But now I do.
Does that sit comfortably? I mean, obviously you're very proud of being a writer, but do you feel any loss of the lawyer title?
Yeah, I feel like I sort of went through that a little bit when I had the kids. I feel like that was the point where I was like, well, what am I doing? And it was really strange to be, at home with very young children when I had no experience with children. And, and it was so different being a mum, and, it was just so different from my everyday life, which was, sitting at the computer in the law firm, like drafting documents. Yeah. So I feel like, and that was, I really it was really important to me to go back to work after I had the kids, because I just really wanted to be like a multifaceted identity that wasn't just kind of one thing.
Well, also because we feel so hopeless at being parents, right? Because we actually don't know what we're doing. And so when you go to work, you know what you're doing. You can kind of feel capable.
Yeah.
Plus, it's very task-oriented, isn't it, work? You review a contract, that contract is reviewed. But when you're at home with children, it's like, well, I made lunch.
Yeah, and now it's all over the floor.
And then I have to do it again. So, no.
I know,
something lovely about working as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the people listen to you when you talk as well. That's what I used to say. I go to work because if I ask someone to do something, they actually do it. Whereas my children, they just ignore me.
Well, little ones, I know, especially little ones.
Yeah.
So what now? You obviously had amazing success with Matia.
It's been lovely.
It really is. It's sort of a credible success. You've had, the Premier's Book Award. That's a pretty big deal. So I've got two questions in a way, because one, I'd love to know the movie Matia.
Oh, yes. Can we? I mean, Kate and I are very accomplished, like sort of producers now. So if you need someone, we need the kind of Greece-based people. Yeah.
I just feel, to me, it is something that would translate so beautifully into a film, I thought, when I was reading it.
Oh, thank you.
One, I guess I'm going to ask, who would play? Obviously Olympia Dukakis for Sia. That was my go-to.
Oh, interesting.
Love her.
She died.
Have you remember Moonstruck with Cher? Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
Shayla.
No. Oh, okay.
That is okay. Well, I'm sorry, I can't help you, Shayla, if you haven't ever watched Moonstruck with Cher. That is such a great movie. I lost my hand. Come on, please.
Okay.
Oh, stop it. You've got to stop the recording go away and watch
Have
Moonstruck.
you seen it, Emily?
I haven't seen Moonstruck, but I think she died.
Oh,
Well,
Yeah,
in
so
that case,
I
then
don't think, but she was also wasn't she in Steel Magnolias?
she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know her from
Well,
that.
I think so. Well, actually, very good question. Well, if she's died, look, she's off. Sorry.
She can't be in it now.
If she's died, I didn't know that. And then actually, no,
Oh.
she will not be good for Sia then.
No.
I think you're right. I think, actually, that's vague memories.
For Sia.
All
So
right,
I
not
think
her then.
there's this show on Netflix at the moment called Maestro in Blue, and it's actually it's a Greek show, and it's a drama, and it's set on this Greek island, and it's about this composer who comes to the island and does this music festival. And there's
I think my algorithms suggested I might like that.
Yeah, so you might like it after reading Matia. I mean, it's a bit different because this is the family that's in Greece, not a family that's been transplanted to Australia. But the sort of grandmother Yaya character in that, she's actually a super famous singer in Greece. Haris Alexiou. She's like the most famous singer. I mean, no one's heard of her outside of Greece.
Right.
She's excellent in that. And when I watched her do that role, I sort of thought that she would be really good at Sia.
Okay. I
But
don't know.
in terms
I'm
of the
definitely going
others,
to watch
I
that
don't
now.
know.
Yeah. So one thing is the movie, Matia the movie. I think I would love to see that because I do, as I said, I do think it would translate so beautifully to film, especially the going back and forwards in time, which I really loved that aspect of the book. But what next? I mean, it must be like, oh no, the second album.
Yeah.
I mean,
stories, because as you said Matia lived in your head for such a long time. Are there other stories that have lived in your head? I've got the questions actually. Are there any legal type of stories that you might like to bring to life, or what's the plan? Not that you need one, but do you have one?
No, these are all good questions. Yeah, so I think the thing is, once you've had one book published, it's tempting to go back to all the other things that got rejected and then just sort of brush them off and send them out. And one of those is a very lawyer-focused novel. But I feel like I had this other story that I did want to write that is maybe the natural follow-up to Matia. So I have a first draft of that. And so I'm sort of working on that as, I guess, the second book. But I feel like, and it's another kind of multi-generational story. But then, the other books, I don't know. I feel like, I feel like I'm just going to sort of see what happens with things too, because I feel like there's a lot of unknowns, and I haven't given myself like a time limit to get something finished and done, because I feel like that wouldn't really help me. And, and I do have very limited time, during the day to write. So I want to be happy with my next book. And
I guess to some extent, not being a writer myself, for that, I mean, I write sort of academic kind of stuff, but I find that hard enough anyway. But there's an aspect to which it must evolve, I guess, as well, that you can't necessarily force it into the container. There's an aspect to which it has to come to life. Is that a hopelessly romantic
Absolutely.
vision of writing?
No. And, that I think that's true. And I like a lot of the stories and a lot of the, everything does really, I guess, live in my head. And then I just have to kind of put it into words. And I mean, that's just how I operate. And I feel if I sort of force things, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work for me. So, and also there's only so many things I can kind of give 100% of my attention to. And I'm terrible at, like, I start one project and I've got this other manuscript, and then I think, this other idea, or maybe I should go back to that. But then I'm like, no, I'm just going to finish this next book. And then.
Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it? When there's so many things, especially, I mean, all things that you're interested in and all things that could get your attention. And I think one of the big things we learned last season, or I'm still trying to learn, is that when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. That's a big one as well, because there's a problem with having your attention divided across too many things when they're all interesting and they're all great things to work on. It does require a certain acceptance, doesn't it? It's not possible to do everything. So I'm just going to have to pick something and focus, but accepting that those other things might just take a back seat for a while or forever, or who knows. But it's just...
Yeah, absolutely. And, But also, there's so much that goes into making a book. And I feel like, you know, it's such an important thing. I want it to be something that's like, that means something to people and that is worth the trees that have died for it. So,
Right, that's such a nice way
yeah,
of putting it. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about money? A lot of people, you know, it's a big stress, really, leaving big jobs and the idea that they're
absolutely.
just going to throw it all in. Was that a stress for you? I mean, obviously, you were working part time, so you'd already sort of made a bit of that transition. But was that a stress for you, and how did you manage some of that?
Yeah, so I feel like, I mean, it's just such a complicated situation because ever since I started working as a lawyer, I always was just asking myself, like, how much money do I actually need? And when would I be able to just quit and be a writer?
Yeah,
So
right.
I feel like, yeah. And so I really have always thought, you know, you just, in such, you know, how much do you need? How much do you need it? And I mean, I guess I'm fortunate in my, you know, position because, you know, my husband and I, we both had professional jobs. We both worked like a lot, you know,
Yeah.
for many years. And then pretty much as soon as I had children, I had to sort of, I guess I made the decision to sort of step away for a bit. So yeah, so I guess yeah, it's something that kind of like worries me a little bit because you know you don't have a salary when you're an author and you know you get royalties and but then other opportunities come up in other ways and so so now I have this I guess career where I had to also accept that I was never going to get paid as well
Yeah,
as
of
being a
course.
lawyer
Yeah.
and I think once I accepted that then I was saying sort of you know I could do other opportunities and I was you know doing you know, being invited to do different, you know, library talks and nice things like that. And, you know, and then also, you know, if you win a prize for your book, sometimes it comes with money and things like that. But basically, yeah, as soon as I accepted that, I wasn't going to earn the same amount of money anymore or ever again, unless, you know, the book gets turned into a movie, which is very unlikely,
I
then
know.
that I was comfortable with it.
Well, I mean, obviously, we won't have Olympia Dukakis in it. And I'm going to
Sorry
check my
about that.
obituaries before I mention anyone else ever again. But yeah, well, I think it would make a wonderful movie. Emily, if you could give one piece of advice to anyone who's dreaming of a career in writing, what would it be?
I would say that you really just have to make time for it, and no one's going to give you permission to do that. You have to sort of give yourself permission to start writing. And yeah, and I mean, I feel like, you know, everyone is so unique and everyone has their own stories and their own different unique stories that they want to tell. And the only person stopping you is really yourself. So I think, you know, anyone can write and, you know, you can get a lot of pleasure out of writing. But then I think there's a separate thing as to being published. I feel like getting published, there are a whole lot of other rules. And that's, you know, like if you want to be published, and I think, and if it's important to you, then I think you need to kind of, it's good to get some help and give yourself like, you know, 10 years, 20 years to kind of, yeah, make it work. But yeah, there's no, I would say start now.
Yeah. Isn't it
Yeah.
that classic line, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago? The second
Yeah.
best time to plant a tree is now. So it sounds the same
Yeah,
kind of advice, isn't
absolutely.
it? The best time
Yeah.
to start writing was 20 years ago, but the second best
Yeah.
time is now. If it's something that
Absolutely.
you want. And as I said, it sounds like it's been sort of something that burned within you, this desire. So if anyone's listening and has that same desire, make time, carve out that time, whether it's sitting in the car outside your kids' school or getting up early to do something. Yeah, it sounds like if it means something, then make that time
Absolutely.
for it.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us
Yeah.
today, Emily. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you
It
so
has.
much
And
for
thank you.
having me.
Thank you so much. And congratulations, honestly, on such a wonderful
Oh,
book. I loved it.
thank
I
you.
really
Thank
enjoyed
you so
reading it.
much.
I loved the stories. And the stories of the characters have lived on in my head a little bit too. You know how
Oh,
sometimes when you've
wow.
read a really good book,
Yes.
you feel like you've got to know people. And that's how I feel about the characters in Matia. I just
Thank
thought it
you.
was a wonderful book. So I wish you every success in
Oh,
whatever you choose to do. And may Matia go on to, well, as I said, I can see it being made into a film in a beautiful location, like sending lots of good vibes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily. Well, that was super interesting. Our second writer on Outlaws podcast.
Yep. So enjoyed talking to Emily Tsokos Purtill, and I highly recommend the book. I loved it. And as I said earlier on in the podcast, I'm not a huge fiction reader. I always tend to go for non-fiction above fiction, but I loved Matia. I really enjoyed it. I got hooked into the story, and it's a really lovely intergenerational story, and I think would resonate with a lot of people, particularly with from immigrant backgrounds, but not necessarily Greek backgrounds. I think it is applicable. Yeah. It was just a beautiful story.
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. I think I'm going to save it for my book club because that sounds like there'd be some really good conversations that come out of it. And it's always nice to read local authors.
Yeah.
And speaking of book clubs, our own little book club, Outlaw Bravery, don't forget that our next book is Conquer Your Imposter by Alison Shamir. And we said this at the end of last season, but we're very excited that Alison is coming in to chat to us about her book as well as to do an episode on imposter syndrome. So that is exciting. So get reading so that when we have that conversation, that'll be coming up in a couple of episodes. If you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, we write pretty good newsletters, we reckon. And so, sign up to our newsletter on the website, and there's also some other resources like the backwards budget and the quiz and stuff on there. We'd love you to be part of that and keep up to date with what we're doing, and also follow us on all of the usual social media channels. I'm better on LinkedIn, to be honest, than Instagram, but I do try on Instagram. So, give us a go. Thanks, Kate.
See everyone. Bye.